Hi again then guys, and welcome to a pick on my top 50 favourite vehicles list, which you might not have expected to be here, or at least for those who do know that I like the car, you might not have expected it to be so high, especially given some of the other cars that we've talked about, stuff like the Ascari A10, the Tesla, which I talk about a lot, various others, the Espace F1 even. Why would the SSC Ultimate AERO be so high on my list in comparison to cars like that? Well, of course, you have to bear in mind, as I said, the list is very fluid, especially between number 11 and 50, they can change around a lot. It tends to be the top 10, which are relatively firmly set, with only the occasional change. For me, though, this is a car which I had a total 180 on, and this happens to me quite a lot. And the funny thing is, when that does tend to happen, the cars that I do that with tend to be among my absolute favourites. This one isn't an absolute favourite, but it's pretty high. 23rd out of a top 50 list is not bad at all, especially given that this is the only car of this type in my entire top 50 countdown. Because if you think about it, the SSC Ultimate AERO is what you could call, or what some do call, a hypercar, or even a mega car, you could say, in the same league as stuff like the Veyron Supersport, the Chiron, the Venom GT, the Koenigsegg Agera, the Regera, the 1-to-1. And yet, out of all of those cars, spoiler alert, the SSC Ultimate AERO is the only car of that caliber to appear on my entire list. And here's another funny thing. This is the fastest car in my entire top 50 list. For top speed, that is. Of course, not around a track. There are plenty of others which could easily outrun the Ultimate AERO around a circuit, but in a straight line, it's the fastest car of all. 258 miles per hour. And in particular, you'll probably have noticed from the pictures that I'm very, very deliberately focusing on the first generation Ultimate AERO, the pre-facelift. And that, to me, is a very important thing, because the Ultimate AERO is one of those cars, in a similar way, funnily enough, to stuff like the Zonda. My absolute favourite Zonda is the Zonda F. Any other Zonda, as much as I love them, and I love every single variant of the Zonda, be it the C12, the S, the GR, the R, whatever, I love them all. But none of them come close to the F. Because that one is a car which just everything falls perfectly into line. With this car, that's also the case for me, because with the facelift, the front end in particular to me looks absolutely hideous. On the facelifted Ultimate AERO, it's got this big, dumb grin on its face, which I think looks appalling. I hate the XT version in the red and black, I think it looks tacky. And I'm not a huge fan of the Tortara either, the potential replacement of the car. There is a car which, if you're aware of it, you might have expected me to put instead of this one, also an SSC, because they actually made an electric version of the Ultimate AERO. I believe it was only ever a prototype with 1,000 horsepower, top speed of something like 208 instead of 258, great acceleration, but of course, they never produced it. But this is one of those occasions where, even if they had, I would still prefer this one, I think, because there's something about the Ultimate AERO which, in kind of an insidious way almost, really grew on me over the years, because when I first saw the car, I had the same reaction to this that many people seem to have to the Hennessy Venom GT. Now, the Hennessy Venom has always been a car that I've liked a lot, but many people view it as just a modified Lotus. That's about as wrong as you can possibly be, but many people still believe that misconception. With me, I thought that about the Ultimate AERO instead, because when I first saw this car, I thought it was the most blatant Lamborghini Diablo ripoff I had ever seen, with tacky colours and probably a stupid amount of power that it doesn't really do anything with, almost like a Zenvo. And don't get me wrong, I love the Zenvo, but the performance which it has doesn't match up to the power which it has. 233 miles per hour from an 1100 horsepower car doesn't exactly sound that efficient. But of course, it's not supposed to be. It's like a spiker. It's just making a statement. With the Ultimate AERO, on the other hand, it proved me wrong. It proved itself. The fastest car in the world is no small task, especially not when the Bugatti Veyron has already set a record. Beating that is a significant thing, but the Ultimate AERO is in that camp with vehicles like the Koenigsegg CCR, which was also very briefly the fastest car in the world before the Veyron was, to be like that, to have the record but not for very long. The XJ220 is also in that club, and I believe the Lamborghini Diablo GT was as well, the 5-minute wonders of the fastest car in the world. And generally speaking, they end up being beaten by something which absolutely annihilates them. Now, in the case of the Ultimate AERO, it doesn't even seem that fast anymore. It's fast, of course, but not quite as fast as it seemed at the time. The Veyron Supersport, the Hennessy Venom GT, the Koenigsegg Regera, Agera 1-1, they're all far faster now. But this car came out well over 10 years ago. It's probably close to 15 actually now, and it set the record. It's got huge raw power from an engine which is much smaller than a Veyron. It's got that typical kind of brutal, raw American power delivery and torque delivery, which makes it a real challenge to drive. In fact, as far as I'm aware, the Ultimate AERO is one of the most challenging, if not the most challenging, of all hypercars to actually get a good lap out of. And I don't just mean on games, I mean in the real world as well. I mean, think about it. How many test drives do you see where people take this around a track? There aren't many, and there's a reason for that. This is a real challenging car through corners. Now, for me, I wouldn't want a car like this because I want to try and prove what it can do around a track. And it's not even the kind of car that I'd want to hit 200 miles per hour on the road with. Of course, there's a certain amount of appeal to that, but that's not the main thing for me. It's almost like the Y2K motorbike, actually. It's not about what it can do, it's about knowing that it can do it. I don't need to prove what it can do. It's just a nice car to have all of that massive potential beneath you. And to me, that's the case with the Ultimate AERO. It's a car that's almost like a spiritual successor in some ways to the TVR Speed 12, if you really think about it. This pure, raw, very well designed, very well engineered, but at the same time very old school approach to making an insanely fast car, one which is almost too dangerous for the road, but in many ways actually achieved what the Speed 12 never could. So, in a weird kind of way, that's one of the reasons why I love it. This is a raw, brutal, old-school hypercar, and I love it for it. It's a car which grew on me so much, but now I really do like it quite a lot. It's not necessarily a car which I would choose over most of the other supercars on my list, but it is one which would definitely enter the equation for me if I actually had the opportunity of owning supercars. It is one that would come up. I don't think it would actually be one that I would get, but it would certainly be in the equation. But that's it for this pick, of course. If you're new to this list, you can check out all of my other picks by clicking through at the end. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.